So the filmmakers that made Tiger King have made another documentary that premieres tonight called Chimp Crazy. And no, this is not an advertisement for it, and if you want proof of that, fuck. But this does make me want to talk about primate parasites. Parasite research on primates is very sparse, with a lot of species only having one documented species of parasite that infects them, but that's just because there's so little research done on them. On the other hand, we have some primates where we have a lot of good research for, like the chimpanzee. The chimpanzee is known to host at least 100 different types of parasites. But to put that in perspective with the injury, which is the largest lemur, they only have about 10. A study was done last year using what is known as an exponential random graph model. Basically, based off the taxonomy and the habitat of different primate species, they were trying to predict how many possible parasites could they be susceptible to. And what they determined is that primates that are larger, that live in more wetter habitats, are more likely to be susceptible to a diverse array of parasite infections, while smaller primates in cooler, drier habitats would have fewer. They also determined that primates that were more closely related were more likely to share some of the same parasites. So a chimpanzee, bonobo, and orangutan were more likely to share parasites than a chimpanzee with like a monkey or a lemur or a loris. And this research highlights why it's so important to study co-extinctions. While some parasites can infect multiple different hosts, for a lot of parasites they only infect one particular species, and if that species goes extinct, so does the parasite. So if you have a species of primate that's a host between 100 and 200 parasites and they go extinct, so do all of those parasites. Which on the surface may seem like not a big deal. But you all know I don't roll that way, and parasite extinctions are just as devastating as the extinction of their host. Parasites are part of the Earth's biodiversity, they play roles in their ecosystems like all other animals, they are needed to keep the environment healthy. Primate parasites are something that I have definitely been slacking on about talking about on this page, so I think I will do one video for every episode of Chimp Crazy. Episode 2 of Chimp Crazy comes out tonight, so it's time for another video on primate parasites. This time we're going to talk about a tapeworm that infects mountain gorillas. And that's this tapeworm, Anoplocephala gorillae. And you can kind of see they look pretty weird for a tapeworm. They look a lot more muscular, and they typically infect large herbivores like gorillas, ungulates, and elephants, which is also very unlike a tapeworm. Tapeworms complete their life cycles by the previous host getting eaten by the next host. So how do herbivores get this tapeworm? A study done on elephants showed that a certain type of mite actually carries these tapeworm eggs, and they like to live on grass, leaves, shrubs, anything herbivores like to eat, and they just get accidentally swallowed by the herbivore host. I haven't read anything that confirms that this is how gorillas get this tapeworm, but gorillas eat a lot of vegetation per day, so it's highly likely that they are also inadvertently swallowing these mites, getting the tapeworm eggs. Another interesting thing about this tapeworm is that other species in this genus that infect elephants and horses are known to cause some pretty serious problems. They have been known to cause ulcers in the guts of elephants, and they can be potentially fatal to horses. But according to this study, the species that infects gorillas actually isn't that big of a problem at all. The presence of these tapeworms in gorillas has not been linked to any kind of health issues, and they're more like parasites that have just become the micro-gut biota of gorillas. A new episode of Chimp Crazy premieres tonight, so it's time for another primate parasite video. And this one's a little different. Chimpanzees are kind of related to this video, but we're going to be talking about a parasite in a human. But humans are still primates, so this totally counts. This is Geza Telecki. He was a wildlife biologist that specialized in chimpanzees. He made several trips to Africa over his career, but after coming home from one field season, he noticed that he wasn't feeling too particularly well. His skin had become extremely itchy and irritated, and it took him weeks to figure out what happened. After looking at samples underneath the microscope, his doctor showed him that he contracted a parasite. This parasite. This is the nematode Onchocerca volvulus. Humans get this parasite when they are bitten by black flies. When the worms get into the human body, they become adults and start to reproduce more offspring. In order for the new offspring to become adults, they have to wait for a black fly to bite the human, suck them up, and fly to another human, and that's how the worm spreads. And this parasite can cause what is known as river blindness. This is the second most common way for humans to become blind when they're infected with something. The juvenile worms can be treated with ivermectin, but there is no real treatment for the adult worms. They do, however, have a symbiotic relationship with a bacteria called Wolbachia, and there is medication people can take that gets rid of the Wolbachia and making the adult worm weaker. There is an episode of Monsters Inside Me on Animal Planet telling Geza Teleki's story. This episode says that he was the first person to take ivermectin as an anti-parasite drug. I haven't seen any other sources saying this though. There are also efforts out there to eradicate this worm from existence. Some human parasites are on a list to be exterminated, such as the guinea worm. This worm is also on the list. The final episode of Chimp Crazy premieres tonight, so it's time to conclude our Primate and Parasite series, at least for a while. Now, I was going to make this video about chimpanzees because that just kind of makes sense, but I don't talk about primates often, so I think instead we're going to talk about a distant relative of the chimp, but it's still a primate, and that is the slow loris. Also, apparently it's Slow Loris Outreach Week, so it's perfect timing. One quick fun fact about slow loris is that they have a gland in their armpit that secretes a toxic substance. They'll lick it up, and when it interacts with the saliva, it becomes a venom. So these are actually venomous primates. Now recently, I've been wondering what kind of parasites a slow loris gets. And apparently I'm not the only one, because this paper from 2015 looks at the gastrointestinal parasites and ectoparasites of the Javan slow loris. It collected 43 fecal samples where they found 3 different types of parasitic worms. And all of them were a type of nematode. I found it interesting that they didn't find any cestodes, tapeworms, or flukes, but I guess it makes sense. They're probably not eating a lot of things that would give them those other worms. Now, one loris was found with missing patches of fur and irritated skin, so upon closer examination, they also found ectoparasites, being this microscopic mite. The researchers of this paper did not determine what species of mite this was, but they concluded that it was probably a type of skin mite. Which, I mean, yeah, that's where they found it. I found this other paper looking at the Bornean slow loris. There's a type of parasitic nematode with the genus Strongyloides, which has a number of different species within it. And it was assumed that all the closely related primates in this area were getting these same species of Strongyloides. But after collecting samples from different species of parasites and testing the DNA, they found that the DNA from the slow loris samples didn't quite match the Strongyloides from the other animals, suggesting that there's probably a different species of Strongyloides infecting the Bornean slow loris. This is why I love parasites. One day you could be studying birds, then you could be studying sharks, and then the next day you could be studying the slow loris.